Let's talk about desire. One of the things that really has been a problem to many Christians is desire or desires. Let's look at Psalm 37, verse 4. And the Bible says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." And so, one of the questions that I have is, are desires wrong? The desires that we have in our lives, are they wrong? Because sometimes the church will tell us not to have desires. But there's something fascinating about the human heart, something so interesting. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white. It doesn't matter whether you are colored. It doesn't matter whether you are American. It doesn't matter which generations you come from, whether you are old or young. There's something fascinating about the human heart. And that thing is that we all desire the same things. We all desire wealth. We all desire fame. We all desire romance. We all desire power. We all desire freedom. We all desire to be significant. We all desire success. We all desire recognition. We desire romance and love. And that is the most fascinating thing wherever you go. And these are the things that the worldly, that we call in the church, we call them worldly fantasies. But what if these worldly fantasies are not evil? What if they are not evil at the root? What if the longing itself, the desire itself, is divine? Now, one of the things is this: the problem is not the desire, because if there was a problem with the desire, you wouldn't have it. The problem is not the desires that we have. The problem is not the desire to be famous or the desire for wealth. The problem is direction. Because desire without direction becomes distraction. Desire without surrender becomes idolatry. When wealth is pursued without God, it becomes greed. When fame is pursued without identity, it becomes insecurity. And when romance is pursued without covenant, it becomes lust. When power is pursued without surrender, it becomes oppression. And when escape or freedom is pursued without purpose, it becomes avoidance. And so the problem is not the desire. The problem is the direction in which we take our desires. The world copies what heaven has designed. And I think every Christian should know that, but they remove God from the center. In other words, the world will promise you fame as long as there is no God in your life. As long as God is not at the center of that fame, they will give you that fame. The world will promise you wealth as long as God is not the center of that wealth. The world will promise you romance and love as long as God is not the center of that love. Psalm 37, as we have read it, 4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." Now, one thing to understand is that God does not erase the desire, he refines it. He refines the desires we have. There are several things that I want to mention today, several things that we call fantasies, several things that the church has told you are demonic and you should never pursue them. But in truth, they are not demonic. The desire and the direction we take it, the devil comes and takes advantage of your desire and then translates it into his will, and it becomes demonic. Number one, the desire for wealth. The desire for wealth is something that every one of us has. Even those who say they don't desire wealth, they desire wealth because this is a desire for abundance. In other words, people want financial freedom. We want financial security. Everyone wants financial comfort. Everyone wants financial overflow. It doesn't matter whether you are an advocate of poverty. I don't think there is anyone who advocates for poverty. It doesn't matter whether you are against the prosperity gospel. Every one of us desires financial freedom. We have a desire for wealth. And Jesus says in the book of John 10:10 that I have come that they may have life and they may have it abundantly. It is not wrong to desire wealth. It is not wrong to pursue wealth. It is not wrong to desire to be rich. And this is one of the things that really the church should, be very, very vocal about. The deeper longing behind wealth is this: I want to live life without fear. Money, if it comes into your life, brings a lot of solutions. Now, God offers security that money cannot buy. As much as money is good, as much as wealth is good, when you have this wealth in the absence of God, it does not bring satisfaction. God is not glorified by your lack, He is glorified by your stewardship. God is also not glorified by your wealth, He is glorified by your stewardship. When the world promises to give you wealth, when the devil promises to give you wealth, God promises to give you abundant life. The desire for fame. Every one of us desires to be seen. That is why many people are on TikTok. That is why you are on YouTube. That is why you are on Facebook. That is why you are on Instagram and all the social media, That is why you post what you post. You take your photos and you post. You take your videos and you post because there is a desire to be famous. We can argue it and say, I don't desire to be famous. I'm simply doing this because of one, two, three. But deep down at the bottom of your heart, you know very well that you desire to be known. You feel that you need to matter to people. You want to be heard. And so you desire fame. There is a desire to be seen. And the devil offers these things, and he offers you fame. But the Bible says in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 1, I have called you by name, you are mine. So when the world is offering fame, the Lord is offering identity in Jesus Christ. You can be famous. People can applaud for you, people can clap for you. But in the absence of the identity in Jesus Christ, in the absence of God in your life, that fame will eventually kill you. And that is why many people, when I talk about Jesus being at the center, I'm not talking about the proclamations that we see some of these popular people make. You can make proclamations that Jesus is in your life, but in truth, Jesus is not in your life. We desire love. As I said, we desire power. We desire to influence. We want to be in positions of influence. We desire freedom. We desire all these things. But at the end of the day, if the Lord is not at the center of that desire, it becomes a trap. It becomes distraction. So desiring these things is not bad. But when you desire it in the absence of God, it becomes a problem. So, what happens when desire is surrendered? What happens when you realize you have a desire that you do not need, a desire that is not glorifying God? When when you align your desires to God's will, when you align your desires to God's purposes, when you surrender those desires, wealth becomes stewardship. Fame becomes influence for God's glory. Romance becomes covenant faithfulness. Power becomes servant leadership, and escape or freedom becomes purpose driven freedom. Significance becomes divine calling. So you get to a point where you change your desires, you give God these desires, you surrender to God, and you say, Lord, these are my desires. Then the Lord begins to use those desires for His glory. Now, the people are not foolish. The world we live in is not foolish. We are hungry. We are hungry for security. We are hungry for identity. We are hungry for love. We are hungry for authority. We are hungry for freedom. We are hungry for meaning in life. And God says, I placed that hunger there. The Lord placed it in our hearts, in our souls. And the answer is not to kill the dream, my friends. The answer is not to kill those desires. The answer is to bring those desires, bring those dreams to Jesus Christ and ask the Lord to use those desires to propel you into places where you can influence for Him. So instead of suppressing them, submit them to God, sanctify them, align them to God. Because God Himself says, the Bible says, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will fulfill the desires of your heart. You see, sometimes when we read that verse or when we quote it, many people leave the first part of that verse and they simply say, hasn't the Lord said that He will fulfill the desires of my heart? But then we forget the first part. Delight yourself. Delight yourself. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. And so, as I conclude, every fantasy will ultimately be fulfilled in Jesus Christ. And when I'm saying this word fantasy and desire, I know many people are thinking about many things, but every one of those things can be submitted to the will of God. When desire meets surrender, fantasy becomes destiny. Your dreams begin to be fulfilled, and not just fulfilled, but you also get fulfilled because Jesus Christ is in your heart. I have come so that they may have life and have it abundantly. God bless you.